How you doing, guys? I used to have this black pit bull some years ago. When you thought she was asleep, she really wasn't. I would get up in the middle of the night, and there she was laying on her back, snoring away, and I would sneak off into the kitchen. By the time I had cracked open that fridge, the dog was sitting there wagging her tail. My grandfather was a very heavy sleeper. Although never failed, every morning, 5 a.m., he was up. This guy could sleep through an earthquake, air raid sirens. You could not disturb him. I mean, he would be snoring away all night, but 5 a.m., yes, he was up. Other people, very light sleepers. I've always been a light sleeper. I maybe get 5 hours of sleep a night before I'm up, and I'm usually up between 4 and 5 a.m. My younger brother, was always an extremely heavy sleeper. And he used to sleepwalk. We were almost infants at the time. He was not quite 2. And he used to sleepwalk. And this was a nightly thing. Now, my parents were average sleepers. There was one night, it was raining heavy out, if I remember right, because I don't even think I was 4 years old at the time, but I remember this clear as day. My brother and I woke up, and we looked, and my younger brother wasn't in bed, which was not unusual because he would get up and wander around. Well, we went to my parents' room thinking he was in there. He wasn't in there either. So we all got up and we started looking around the house. He may have gotten up, slept, walked, or fell asleep somewhere. I looked out the window, and there he was, sound asleep in the rain, laying in the sandbox. My father ran outside. I never saw this guy move so fast in my life, and brought him back inside. My brother was hospitalized. He had contracted pneumonia. He recovered. But after that, my mother had the hardest time falling asleep. And even after some time went by, she became one of the lightest sleepers. A slight sound would wake her up. And that's the way she remained forever. I mean, that's just the way she was. She was always panicky. She always remembered that. And even though they took precautions and double bolted that door so that my brother couldn't get out, there was always that maybe, what if she would get up periodically during the course of the night. And unfortunately, once you go through that, there's no way you're ever going to be able to fully get a night's sleep again. When I started waking up to the truth about Watchtower, there was no turning around. I mean, there was a lot less information out then than there is now, but it was enough to wake me up. And not just the child molestation that was going on, but everything. And I had decided that no, this was not the truth. I decided to walk away. And over the next few years, as I found out more and more people were waking up to the criminal activities in this organization, and pretty much the people that were going to wake up, woke up, and they got out. And yes, there is still some inside that are awake and fully aware of what Watchtower is. The sorry thing is, there are still people inside defending this organization. And that's one thing we have in common, most of us. We all defended this organization at one time until we realized that there's nothing to defend. The unfortunate thing, the people today that are defending the organization still, there are people that you're just never going to be able to wake up no matter what you do, no matter what kind of evidence. They're always going to be convinced that they are lies, no matter what you show them. And it's almost pointless. And unfortunately, many of you still have family members in. There is more information out today than there was a few years ago, and every year that goes by. The witnesses in Oxygen. Dateline has done things on it. The case in Montana is being reopened. And now Pennsylvania is jumping on the bandwagon as well. There is more evidence against Watchtower, and yet there are so many Jehovah's Witnesses that are still asleep. And unfortunately, at this stage of the game, they're just not going to wake up because they choose not to. Unfortunately, when you're that indoctrinated, no amount of evidence is going to wake somebody up. It's like people that can sleep through an air raid siren. No matter what you do, you can't get them up. I hear a door creaking or a floorboard creaking, I'm awake. And when I started seeing certain things when I was still in and started fading, there was no way they were going to put me back to sleep. They tried. But that just goes to show, that told me right there, they don't know me as well as they thought they did. Once somebody sees through it, once somebody is awake, they're not going to go back to sleep. It's just, it's ridiculous. The witnesses that are still asleep today, no amount of talking, no amount of evidence is ever going to wake them up. And that's a damn shame. When I started seeing through it, I was under the assumption that there were other people in my congregation that were seeing through it as well. And that was my mistake. You know, I was assuming that they were seeing through this. The songbook, we all remember the phallic symbol on the back of the songbook. And sometimes I assume that people are on the same wavelength I am, and many are not. I mean, this isn't just inside the org, this is outside as well. There is just so many people that are oblivious to everything that's going on right now, and you try to tell them and they think you're crazy. So I'm very select what I say these days. I don't open up just to anybody. There's only a few select people I do, which is too bad because most people are all in their little world. Jehovah's Witnesses are obviously living in their own little world. One of the first things I was taught, you have to live your life with blinders. That made no sense to me. You were given a full field of vision for a reason. You grew up with a full understanding and a brain for a reason. But what Jehovah's Witness watchtower attempts to do is close your eyes to everything around you. In other words, desensitize you to everything. They will tell you how to think. What's the purpose in having a brain if you can't use it? And as far as going through life with blinders on, try crossing a busy street with blinders on. Cannot be done. They think it's for their own good, but it is not. When are you going to have all this evidence, court-documented evidence? The Australian Royal Commission, which many are still in denial about. How can you be in denial about that when it's all out there? This isn't just 1, 2 congregations. This is many worldwide that's been covered up for many, many decades. And you've got so many of Jehovah's Witnesses that are still in denial. They prefer to live their lives in a slumberland. And that's a hell of a way to live. I've known people that could sleep all day long, and that to me was a waste. Like I said, I'm always afraid I'm going to miss something, so I'm up at the crack of dawn. Coffee's going, and I'm already up. And it's just, I could never spend my entire life in bed, but so many of Jehovah's Witnesses spend their entire life with their blinders on and asleep to what's going on. Most haven't a clue. You mentioned the average, most mundane things that happen on the outside of the organization, and they're totally lost. Conversation, there really isn't any. That's why conversation in the organization is so robotic. I could never live like that. So when I went into the organization, I was already set up for failure from the get-go. Because I know I couldn't go through my life with blinders on, ignoring everything around me. It's not for your own good to let these 8 Goombas in Warwick do the thinking for you. This is why you have a brain. It's kind of like having a backseat driver while you have a blindfold on, driving down the highway and letting them tell you where to go. Not very safe, is it? But to anybody who's got family in the organization, I feel for you. Because as time goes on, the longer they stay in, it's going to be more and more difficult to wake these people up. Anybody that has already woken up and gotten out, it seems to me that's pretty much it. There are going to be a lot of diehards that are going to fight to the very end that they have the truth, and that's too bad. You can continue, but the thing is, it's no longer about these videos, everything that's being done with the XJW community. Today, it's no longer about waking people up. It's about educating people on the outside to the truth about this organization. and try and stop people from actually going in. Unfortunately, it's the young people that are stuck inside the organization I feel sorry for. Anybody old enough to know better, they can pretty much fend for themselves and they can make their own minds up. If they believe this is truth, the truth, there's nothing you can do about it. But it's the kids that are trapped in this organization that are the real prisoners. And Watchtower's database is proof of that. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. You guys have a good day. I will talk to you later in the week.